It was a cold December evening in Chicago. Snow covered the streets, and the wind carried the smell of winter. Inside a small, old apartment, a man named Michael Turner sat on a worn-out sofa, staring at a bunch of bills on the table. His face looked tired, his eyes heavy, and his hands shaking slightly as he held the papers. Michael was a good man, a hard-working father who had spent his whole life trying to provide for his little family. But lately, life had been unkind. He had lost his job at a car repair shop a few months ago, and ever since then, he had been struggling to pay rent and bills. His 12-year-old son, Ethan, sat quietly in the corner, doing his homework. The boy kept looking at his father every few seconds, sensing something was wrong. The silence in the room was heavy, the kind that spoke louder than words. "Dad, are you okay?" Ethan asked softly. Michael forced a smile, trying to hide the pain in his heart. "I'm fine, buddy. Just thinking about a few things." But he wasn't fine. The truth was, he had only $200 left, and the rent was due in 3 days. Their landlord had already warned him that if he didn't pay, they would have to leave the apartment. Michael's eyes moved toward the window, where his old silver Honda Accord was parked. That car was more than just a vehicle to him. It was the first car he had ever bought, the car he used to bring Ethan home from the hospital when he was born. Every scratch and dent on it carried a memory. But now, it was the only thing left that had real value. Michael leaned back on the sofa, covering his face with his hands. He whispered to himself, "What else can I do?" That night, when Ethan went to sleep, Michael sat alone at the kitchen table. The clock ticked softly in the background. He looked at an old photo of him and his late wife Laura smiling inside that same car. She had passed away when Ethan was just 5. Since then, Michael had promised himself he would protect their son no matter what. But how do you protect someone when you can't even pay rent? After a long pause, he made his decision. The next morning, he would sell the car. The next day, the sky was gray and heavy with clouds. Michael stood beside his car, holding the keys tightly. A man named Mr. Wilson, who owned a small used car lot nearby, had agreed to buy it for $4,000, enough to cover rent for a few months and keep food on the table. Ethan followed his dad outside, confused. "Dad, why are we selling the car?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Michael bent down to meet his son's eyes. "Because we need to, Ethan. Sometimes in life, we have to let go of things we love to take care of what really matters." "But you love this car," Ethan said, his eyes filling with tears. Michael smiled sadly. "I love you more." He hugged Ethan tightly. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The cold air stung their faces, and the world felt quiet, too quiet. When Mr. Wilson arrived, Michael handed him the keys. As the man drove the car away, Michael stood there watching until it disappeared down the street. Ethan watched too, his small hands balled into fists. He didn't fully understand why his dad had to do it, but something inside him changed that day. He saw the sadness in his father's eyes, and he promised himself that someday, somehow, he would make things right. That night, while his father was asleep, Ethan picked up his dad's old flip phone from the kitchen counter. He scrolled through the contacts, found the voice memo option, and pressed record. He whispered softly into the phone. "Hey Dad. I know you sold the car for us. I know you're sad. But one day, I'll buy it back for you. I promise. You'll see." He smiled proudly at his little secret. Then he placed the phone back on the table and went to bed. But what Ethan didn't know was that his dad had never opened that phone again. Life kept moving, days turned into months, months into years. The phone was later packed away in a box and forgotten. Still, that voice message stayed there, quietly waiting, a small promise frozen in time. Later that week, Michael came home with a brown envelope. Inside was the rent receipt. He had done what he had to do, but something inside him felt empty. Every time he walked past the empty parking space where the car used to be, it reminded him of what he'd lost. He would often stand at the window, staring out into the street, his hands deep in his pockets. "Dad," Ethan said one evening, "when we get more money, can we buy another car?" Michael smiled softly. "Maybe one day, son. Maybe one day." His voice cracked a little at the end, but Ethan didn't notice. The boy only nodded and went back to drawing. Michael turned off the light and sat back on the couch. He looked up at the ceiling, whispering quietly, "Laura. I hope I'm doing the right thing." The room was dark except for the dim glow from the street light outside. Somewhere in that darkness, the faint sound of the wind brushed against the window, calm, yet filled with a strange sadness. And that night, as Michael drifted off to sleep, the camera would slowly zoom in on the old phone lying on the table, the screen black, but inside it, a single voice message sat quietly, holding a promise that would one day change everything. 10 years passed. The little boy who once made a promise into his father's old phone was now a grown man. Ethan Turner, 22 years old, lived in a small apartment in New York City. Life had changed in so many ways. He was taller, stronger, and carried a quiet confidence that came from years of hard work and struggle. He had graduated from college just a year ago and worked at a small tech company as an assistant designer. Money wasn't much, but it was enough to survive rent, food, and sometimes a small gift for his father back in Chicago. Every Sunday evening, Ethan called his dad. Michael still lived in the same old apartment, though it looked even older now. His hair had turned gray, and his voice carried the calm of someone who had learned to live with less. "Hey, Dad. How are you doing?" Ethan asked one night, eating instant noodles on his couch. "I'm okay, son," Michael replied. "Just finished work. Mr. Carter needed help fixing his truck again." Michael now worked part-time fixing neighbors' cars in a small garage near the building. It wasn't much, but it kept him busy and gave him purpose. "You still working too hard, huh?" Ethan laughed. Michael smiled. "It's in the blood. You'll understand when you're a father someday." They both laughed softly, but behind that laughter, Ethan could sense something: a sadness, a loneliness. His dad had spent years sacrificing everything, but now, alone and aging, he had no one beside him. That night, after the call, Ethan sat quietly looking at his small desk. On the corner sat a box filled with old family things, pictures, letters, and a few memories his dad had given him when he left for college. He hadn't opened it in years. Something inside him said, "Take a look." He pulled the box closer and opened it. Inside was a small photo album, an old wallet, a few childhood drawings, and at the bottom, covered in dust, was a silver flip phone. Ethan's eyes widened. He recognized it immediately: his dad's old phone. The same one his father used when times were hard. He picked it up slowly, turning it over in his hand. The back cover was scratched, and the battery was dead. But as he held it, memories began to flood his mind: the nights his dad came home tired but still smiled, the cold mornings when they shared breakfast even when there was barely enough food. Ethan smiled softly, whispering, "You really gave everything for me, didn't you, Dad?" Curious, he found an old charger in his drawer, connected it, and waited. The screen blinked for a few seconds and then lit up. "Welcome," one new message. Ethan frowned. A message? After all these years? He pressed the button, and the message began to play. It was crackly, faint, but the voice that came next froze him completely. "Hey Dad. I know you sold the car for us. I know you're sad. But one day, I'll buy it back for you. I promise. You'll see." For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. It was his voice. His 12-year-old self. He felt his eyes burn with tears. The sound of his young voice felt like a whisper from the past, innocent, hopeful, full of love. He sat down on the floor, the phone still in his hand. All those years ago, his father had given up everything for him, even his most precious memory, that car. And here he was, grown up, living his own life, while his father still lived with that quiet sadness. He realized something: his father had never stopped sacrificing, and Ethan had never truly repaid him. The words in the message echoed again in his mind. "One day, I'll buy it back for you. I promise." He closed his eyes and whispered, "Maybe it's time I keep that promise." The next morning, Ethan called his best friend, Ryan. "Hey man," Ethan said, his voice filled with excitement. "Remember that old car my dad sold years ago? The silver Honda?" "Yeah, the one he loved more than anything?" Ryan asked. "Yeah. I want to find it. The exact same one. I need your help." Ryan laughed. "You serious?" "I've never been more serious," Ethan said. "He sold it to save us. I want to give it back." Ryan paused for a moment. "All right, I'm in. Let's find it." That day began a new chapter for Ethan. He started searching through old documents, digging through boxes his father had saved. Finally, in a pile of dusty papers, he found what he was looking for: the VIN number of the car. He entered it into a few online car databases and forums. Days passed with no luck. Then one night, he got a reply from a user in Texas. The message said, "Hey, I think I have your dad's old Honda. Bought it from a guy in Chicago years back. Still runs great." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He immediately replied, explaining the full story about his father, the struggle, the car, the promise. A few hours later, the man replied again. "Son, your story touched my heart. This car belongs with your father again. Let's make it happen." Ethan stared at the screen, speechless. He looked up toward the window, where the city lights shimmered softly through the curtains. In that moment, he felt something powerful: the same warmth, love, and hope he had felt as a kid when his father tucked him into bed. He smiled and whispered, "Dad, you have no idea what's coming." As the night grew quiet, Ethan picked up the phone one more time. He replayed the voice message again. His childlike voice echoed softly through the room. "One day, Dad, I'll buy it back for you. Promise." Ethan smiled, wiping away a tear. "I'm coming home soon, Dad. And I'm bringing something with me." The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He stood in front of the mirror, looking at himself: the same brown eyes, the same tired smile, but today there was something new in his eyes: purpose. He had found the man who owned his father's old car. The man's name was Mr. Thompson, a retired mechanic living in a small town in Austin, Texas. Ethan couldn't believe his luck. He opened his laptop, looked at the message again, and read the man's words out loud. "This car belongs with your father again. Let's make it happen." Ethan smiled. "Let's do this," he whispered. He called the number Mr. Thompson had given him. After 2 rings, a kind, calm voice answered. "Hello. Hi, sir. This is Ethan Turner. We talked online about the silver Honda Accord." "Oh, yes," the man said warmly. "I've been waiting for your call. You've got yourself one special story there, son." Ethan laughed softly. "Yeah, that car means everything to my dad. He sold it when I was a kid. He had no choice." Mr. Thompson's voice softened. "A father's love always comes first, doesn't it? You sound like a good kid. I think he raised you right." Ethan's throat tightened a little. "He did. He gave me everything." There was a short pause, and then Mr. Thompson said, "Well, the car's still in good shape. I've taken care of it all these years. If you want to buy it back, I'll give it to you for what I paid, no profit. Ethan couldn't believe his ears. Sir, are you serious? As serious as a heart attack, the man chuckled. I think it's time the car goes back home. That evening, Ethan sat at his desk, calculating every dollar he had. Between his savings and his next paycheck, he barely had enough to cover the car and a one-way flight to Texas. He didn't care. He wanted to do this himself, no loans, no help, no shortcuts. He called his best friend Ryan that night. Ryan, I found it. The car. It's real. Ryan shouted on the phone, no way. Man, that's crazy. Ethan laughed. I'm flying to Texas next week. I'm bringing it back. Ryan paused for a second. You're actually doing it, huh? Yeah, Ethan said quietly. He gave up everything for me. Now it's my turn. A week later, Ethan stepped off a small plane in Austin. The Texas air was warm and dry, and the sky stretched endlessly blue above him. He took a cab to Mr. Thompson's house, a small white home surrounded by oak trees, with a few old cars parked in the driveway. Mr. Thompson, a kind man in his 60s with oil-stained hands and a big smile, greeted him. Ethan. You made it, son. Yes, sir. It's good to finally meet you. The older man motioned toward the garage. Come on. I want to show you something. As the door slowly opened, sunlight hit the shiny silver paint of the Honda Accord. It looked exactly like Ethan remembered from his childhood. Even the small scratch near the left headlight was still there. For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. He ran his hand along the hood, memories flooding back like a movie. He could almost see his dad sitting in the driver's seat, smiling, saying, "Ready for a ride, buddy?" Tears filled Ethan's eyes. It's perfect, he whispered. Mr. Thompson patted his shoulder. She's yours now. Take good care of her and of your dad. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. I will, sir. I promise. That night, Ethan stayed in a small motel outside town. He sat in the car for hours, just staring at the steering wheel. The faint smell of old leather and engine oil filled the air, the same smell he remembered from when he was little. He took out a small notebook and began to write a note for his dad. It read, Dad. Years ago, you sold this car to pay rent. You said sometimes we have to let go of things we love for the people we love more. You gave up your dream for me. Today, I'm giving it back to you. Ethan. He folded the note neatly and placed it inside the glove compartment. Then he took a small metal keychain, one that said #OneDad, and hung it from the mirror. The next morning, he hit the road. It was a long drive from Texas to Chicago, almost 16 hours, but Ethan didn't mind. He wanted time to think, to remember, to prepare himself for the look on his father's face. As he drove through open highways and small towns, memories filled his mind. His dad teaching him how to ride a bike, the nights they spent watching movies, the way his father's hands always smelled of engine grease. Every mile brought him closer to home and to the promise he was finally keeping. When he stopped for gas somewhere in Missouri, he looked at the sky and whispered, Mom, if you can hear me, he's getting his car back. He smiled, a tear slipping down his cheek. By the time he reached Chicago, it was late evening. The city lights glowed softly in the distance. Ethan parked the car a few blocks from his father's apartment. He turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and whispered, It's time. He reached into his bag, pulled out the old phone, the same one that had kept his childhood voice message safe for all these years, and smiled. Tomorrow was Father's Day. And tomorrow, his dad would get the surprise of a lifetime. The sun was shining softly over the quiet Chicago streets. It was Father's Day morning, and the city carried that gentle calm that comes after a long week. Inside a small apartment building, Michael Turner sat on his porch, sipping a cup of black coffee. He looked older now, his hair grayer, his hands rough from years of repairing engines, and his back slightly bent. But his eyes, though tired, still carried kindness. He didn't expect anything special that day. For him, Father's Day was just another Sunday. Ethan had called the night before, saying he'd been a little busy with work, so Michael assumed he wouldn't visit this year. Still, he smiled and whispered to himself, "It's okay. He's got his own life now. That's what I wanted." He looked out at the street, where children were playing and families were laughing. A small ache grew in his heart, not sadness exactly, but the quiet emptiness of missing someone deeply. A few blocks away, Ethan sat in the car, the silver Honda Accord that once belonged to his father. His hands rested on the steering wheel, and his heart beat faster than it ever had. The car looked perfect. He had cleaned it, polished it, and even fixed a few small scratches. Inside, the dashboard gleamed, and the air smelled of fresh leather mixed with faint traces of memory. He looked at the note in the glove compartment one last time, then at the old phone lying beside him. "Okay," he whispered, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." He started the engine. The familiar soft hum filled the air, the same sound his father once heard every morning before work. As the car rolled slowly down the street toward Michael's building, Ethan could already see his dad sitting on the porch, lost in thought. He parked quietly in front of the house. The sound of the engine made Michael look up. For a moment, he froze. The shape, the color, the way the car gleamed in the sunlight, it all looked too familiar. He stood up slowly, blinking, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "No, it can't be," he whispered under his breath. The car door opened. Ethan stepped out. He was wearing a light blue shirt, jeans, and a smile that carried years of love and gratitude. He held up a small silver key. "Hey, Dad," he said softly. "Happy Father's Day." Michael stared at him for a moment, speechless. Then his eyes fell on the car again. He walked toward it slowly, his hands trembling. "Ethan, is this?" Ethan nodded, his eyes shining. "It's yours, Dad." "The same one." Michael placed his hand on the hood, tracing the same tiny scratch near the headlight that had always been there. "It really is," he whispered. "This is our car." He turned to his son, tears filling his eyes. How did you find it?" Ethan laughed through his own tears. "A little help, a lot of searching, and a promise I made a long time ago." Michael frowned softly. "A promise?" Ethan opened the car door. "Come, sit inside. There's something I want to show you." Michael slowly sat in the driver's seat. His hands touched the steering wheel like it was something sacred. It felt the same, the smooth texture, the way it fit perfectly under his hands. He looked around, noticing small details, the old radio, the dashboard light, the same smell. And then he saw something new, a small paper note tucked inside the glove compartment. He pulled it out and began to read. "Dad. Years ago, you sold this car to pay rent. You said sometimes we have to let go of things we love for the people we love more. You gave up your dream for me. Today, I'm giving it back to you. Ethan." Michael's lips trembled as he finished reading. His hands shook as he held the paper close to his heart. He turned to Ethan. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," Ethan said softly. "Just drive it." Michael laughed through tears. "You sure about that?" "Positive," Ethan smiled. "I even filled the gas tank." They both laughed, and for a moment, the years of struggle and sadness melted away. Michael started the car, and the engine came to life. The sound brought back so many memories: early morning drives, family trips, laughter echoing inside these very seats. He drove slowly down the street, Ethan sitting beside him. For a few minutes, they didn't speak. The wind brushed through the open windows, carrying the sound of their laughter. After a short drive, they parked near the lake, the same place Michael used to take Ethan when he was little. They sat in silence, watching the water move gently under the evening sun. Michael finally spoke. "You know, when I sold this car, I thought I was losing a part of my life. But looking at you now, I realize I didn't lose anything. I gained everything that mattered." Ethan smiled softly. "You always say things like that, Dad." Michael looked at him, eyes glistening. "You kept your promise, didn't you?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, Dad. I did." They sat there for a long time, two men bound not by words, but by love, sacrifice, and a silver car that had somehow brought them back together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael whispered, almost to himself, "I never thought I'd see this car again." Ethan placed the old phone in his father's hand. "Then maybe it's time you heard something else you thought was gone." Michael looked at him, confused. "What's this?" "Just press play," Ethan said quietly. Michael pressed the button. And then, after 10 long years, he heard his son's 12-year-old voice say, "Hey Dad. I know you sold the car for us. I know you're sad. But one day, I'll buy it back for you. I promise. You'll see." Michael froze. The sound of that young voice filled the air like a ghost from the past. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "You really did keep your promise, son." Ethan smiled gently. "Promise kept, Dad." They hugged tightly, father and son, surrounded by the golden light of the setting sun, two hearts finally at peace. The golden sun had dipped low behind the Chicago skyline, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. By the calm lake where they had parked, Michael Turner sat behind the wheel of his silver Honda Accord, feeling the warmth of the fading sun on his face. Beside him, Ethan, now 22, looked at his father with a quiet satisfaction. It was hard to believe how much time had passed. 10 years ago, Michael had sold this very car to pay rent, never imagining he would see it again. And now, here it was shining, perfect, and whole. But what made the moment even more precious was Ethan. His grown son, who had promised, and kept that promise against all odds. Michael finally broke the silence. "You know, Ethan. I never thought I'd hear that voice again," he said softly. Ethan tilted his head, curious. "What voice?" Michael's eyes softened as he picked up the old flip phone Ethan had brought along. "I never played this message," Michael said. "I found this phone years ago, but I was too busy, too tired, to listen. I forgot it was there." Ethan smiled. "Then it's time you hear it now." Michael pressed play, and the small speaker crackled softly. Then, from 10 years ago, a young voice filled the air, innocent, hopeful, and full of love. "Hey Dad. I know you sold the car for us. I know you're sad. But one day, I'll buy it back for you. I promise. You'll see." Michael froze. His heart pounded in his chest as tears welled up in his eyes. He turned slowly to Ethan, who was watching quietly, a gentle smile on his face. You really did this," Michael whispered. "After all these years, you kept your promise." Ethan reached over and placed his hand on his father's shoulder. "I told you I would, Dad. I never forgot. You gave up so much for me. Now it's my turn to give back." Michael blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the flood of emotions. He thought about every sacrifice he had made, working long nights, skipping meals, worrying about rent, all to make sure Ethan had a chance at a better life. And now, for the first time in a decade, he felt the weight of those years lift. He laughed softly, though tears streamed down his face. "I feel. I don't know, complete." Ethan nodded. "You've always done everything for me, Dad. This is the smallest way I can show you how much it means." For a long moment, they sat in silence, letting the quiet of the lake and the warmth of the car surround them. The engine hummed softly beneath them, almost like it was celebrating the reunion. Finally, Michael spoke again. "You know, I never thought a car could carry so much meaning. But now I understand. It's never been about the car, has it? It's about love and trust and promises kept." Ethan smiled. "Exactly. That's why I wanted to do this. Not for the car, but for you. For us." Michael reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the small note Ethan had left earlier that morning. He held it close to his chest. This means more than words, son. You made a father proud today." Ethan chuckled softly. "You've made me proud every day, Dad. Even when times were hard, you never gave up." They looked at each other, father and son, connected by years of sacrifice, love, and unspoken promises. The silver Honda Accord sat quietly beside them, a symbol of endurance, of hope, and of love that never fades. Michael pressed the old phone gently. "I guess some messages are meant to wait for the right time." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, some promises take a lifetime to keep." Michael looked out at the lake one last time. The water shimmered in the evening light, calm and endless. "I'll never forget this day," he said softly. "Never." Ethan placed his hand on his dad's. "Neither will I." They stayed there for a while longer, just watching the sun disappear behind the horizon, knowing that life had brought them full circle. Finally, Michael started the engine and drove the car slowly back toward their apartment. Ethan watched the city lights glow, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. For 10 years, the promise had waited quietly inside a small phone. And now, it had been fulfilled in the most beautiful way. As they parked the car outside the building, Michael turned to Ethan and whispered, "You know, maybe it's not the car, maybe it's the heart behind it that really matters." Ethan smiled warmly. "Exactly, Dad. And your heart has always been the biggest gift." Michael hugged him tightly. "I love you, son. More than anything." "I love you too, Dad," Ethan replied, holding him close. And in that simple, quiet moment, all the years of struggle, sacrifice, and unspoken promises finally found their ending, filled with love, hope, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his son.